Chosen one. Stop what you are doing right now and lock your eyes on this message. That restless feeling in your spirit, the one that has been pulling at you all day, telling you that you are missing something, that there is a word you have not yet received, this is it. The enemy has been working overtime this week for one reason, and one reason only. He knows that what you are about to hear will permanently dismantle every lie he has spent months building inside your mind. It all ends today. The confusion, the silence, the feeling that heaven has gone quiet on you. But you need to understand something critical before we go any further. It is not ending because time ran out. It is ending because God is done waiting for you to be ready, and He has decided to move anyway. Think back to that moment earlier this week when you almost stopped, when you almost put the phone down, closed the app, walked away from your prayer, and told yourself it was not working. You did not know it then, but that moment of staying, that one small act of not quitting, was the turning point. That was the moment heaven marked your file and said enough is enough. You did not delay your breakthrough. You triggered it. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. God did. This is a divine appointment that was written into your timeline before the foundations of the earth were laid. You are not here by chance. You are here by assignment. Stay until the very last second of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to deliver to you the final instructions God has been trying to get to you all week. I am going to expose the specific lie the enemy planted in your mind to keep you from receiving them. And at the end, I am going to give you a declaration so precise and so targeted that when you speak it, it will permanently close the door on the season that has been draining you. Do not scroll past this. The version of you that has been on your knees asking God why He has gone silent, this is the moment the answer arrives. If you leave now, you leave 1 minute before the verdict is read. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere in your life has not just been still. It has been suffocating, like the whole world kept moving and you were standing in the middle of it, frozen, watching everyone else receive what you have been believing for. Maybe you were lying in bed last night, staring at the ceiling with a weight on your chest that you could not explain, running through every decision you have made in the last 6 months, wondering where it went wrong. Or maybe you were mid-conversation with someone this week, and you felt it, that hollow ache behind your ribs, the one that tells you something important is overdue, and you are starting to lose faith that it is ever going to arrive. You feel like you are standing in a hallway with every door closed, not locked, just closed, and you are afraid to reach out and turn a handle because you do not know if you can survive another door that will not open. And in that hallway, in that silence, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie. He has been telling you that the reason God has gone quiet is because God is finished with you. He has been replaying every moment you fell short this year. That moment when you reacted instead of responded. That moment when your faith wavered and you said out loud that you were not sure anymore. That moment when you stopped reading, stopped praying, stopped believing at full strength. The accuser is telling you that those moments disqualified you, that you missed the window, that these final instructions were meant for someone who held it together better than you did. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Romans 11:29 says, "The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable." Listen to what that means. Not conditional, not revocable, not subject to your worst week or your lowest moment. Irrevocable. The calling God placed on your life before you were born cannot be cancelled by a moment when your faith cracked under pressure. The assignment written into your DNA does not expire because you had a season where you struggled to believe at full volume. The enemy wants you to think you are disqualified, but God is standing in that hallway with you right now, and He is not handing you a rejection letter. He is handing you final instructions. The silence you have been living in is not absence. It is preparation. It is the deep breath before the declaration. It is the moment before a general gives the order to advance. You are not being abandoned. You are being positioned. The exhaustion you feel is not the weight of a life falling apart. It is the weight of a season that is finally, completely, irreversibly over. You did not miss the window. You walked right through it without realizing it. And everything you felt this week, every crack, every moment of doubt, every conversation you walked away from instead of escalating, that was not weakness. That was the final test. And you passed it. Because here's what no one tells you about the ones God has chosen. The preparation doesn't look like preparation. It looks like loss. It looks like delay. It looks like everyone else moving forward while you stand still, wondering if you missed something, wondering if God forgot your name. But He didn't forget you. He's been building you. And everything you've been through, every closed door, every silent season, every relationship that ended without explanation, was instruction disguised as interruption. Think about what a master craftsman does before he presents his finest work. He doesn't rush the process. He doesn't skip the fire or abbreviate the refining. He works slowly, deliberately, with a precision that looks from the outside like nothing is happening. The clay doesn't understand the pressure of the potter's hands. The gold doesn't comprehend the necessity of the furnace. And you, standing in the middle of your own process, feeling the heat of seasons that haven't broken yet, feeling the silence of a God who seems to have gone quiet. You don't always have the vantage point to see what's being formed, but that doesn't mean the forming has stopped. It means you are in the hands of someone who works in depths that your eyes cannot yet see. Isaiah 64:8 declares it plainly, "Yet you, Lord, are our Father. We are the clay, you are the potter. We are all the work of your hand. You are not abandoned material. You are unfinished masterpiece. And the potter is still at the wheel. Every closed door you've grieved was a redirection that your limited sight couldn't read as mercy in the moment. Every silent season you endured was a classroom with no visible teacher, where the lesson was being written not on paper, but into the fiber of your character. Every relationship that ended without explanation, every door that shut before you could understand why those were not accidents in your story. They were edits. And the author of your life doesn't make mistakes when he edits. He removes what would have diluted your purpose, separated what would have misdirected your path, and closed what would have led you into a chapter that was never part of the original manuscript. He wrote for you before time began. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God. And for those called to speak His truth, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now stay with me, because what I'm about to take you through isn't a list of things to do. This is a revelation. And revelations don't come in steps, they come in layers. Each one deeper than the last. Each one exposing something you didn't know was there. So if you feel something shifting in your chest right now, that's not emotion. That's your spirit recognizing truth it's been waiting to hear. There is a difference between information and revelation. Information enters through the mind and gets filed away with everything else you've been told. Revelation enters through the spirit, and it doesn't file, it dismantles. It reaches the parts of you that sermons haven't touched, that conversations haven't reached, that even your own prayers have circled around without landing on. Revelation is the moment the light breaks through, and you see not just what is true, but what has always been true about God, about your life, about why you are still standing when every storm that came against you should have taken you under. So if something is moving in you right now, don't dismiss it. Don't intellectualize it. Don't defer it to another time when you're more ready. This is the moment. And moments like this don't circle back around on demand. They come when God is ready to speak, and the wisest thing you can do is be still enough to receive what He is releasing. The first thing you need to understand is that you have been in agreement with a version of yourself that God never authored. You've been speaking words about your own life, words like, "I'm too late," "I'm too broken," "I've made too many mistakes," and you've been saying them with such familiarity that they stopped feeling like lies. They started feeling like facts. But a lie repeated long enough doesn't become truth. It becomes a prison. And you have been living inside one you helped build. The prophet Jeremiah tried to disqualify himself before he even began. He told God he was too young, too weak, too unqualified. And God's response wasn't to argue with him. God simply said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." In other words, your opinion of yourself is not the final authority on what you were made to do. Sit with that for a moment. Before you drew your first breath, before your name was given, before anyone looked at you and formed an opinion about what you were capable of or what your limitations were, God already knew you. Not just knew of you, knew you intimately, completely, with full awareness of every mistake you would make, every wound you would carry, every year you would spend in the wilderness, questioning whether He had forgotten your name. And knowing all of that, He still chose you. He still said your name before the foundations of the earth. He still wrote your calling into the fabric of eternity before you ever arrived to mess it up. That means every self-disqualifying statement you've spoken over your own life has been contradicting a declaration God made about you before you were even capable of forming words. His word about you is older than your doubt. His knowledge of you is deeper than your shame. And His plans for you are not subject to revision based on your personal assessment of your own unworthiness. But here's where it goes deeper. It's not just the lie you've believed about yourself. It's the identity that lie created. Because when you believe the wrong thing about who you are long enough, you start making decisions from that place. You start shrinking in rooms where you were meant to lead. You start apologizing for gifts that were given to you by God Himself. You start calling your calling arrogance, your vision, pride, your fire, something that needs to be put out. And so you dim yourself, not because God asked you to, but because the wound convinced you that smallness was humility. It's not. Smallness is fear wearing a spiritual disguise. There is a particular kind of spiritual tragedy that doesn't get talked about enough, and it is this. The person who was assigned to carry something significant, who instead spent their entire life making themselves small enough not to threaten the comfort of the people around them. The person who was given a voice and used it only in whispers because someone early in their story taught them that being loud meant being wrong. The person who carried a vision from God and buried it under the language of humility because they had been taught that wanting more was the same as being ungrateful for what you had. That is not humility. Humility is not the reduction of what God placed in you. Humility is the full surrender of what God placed in you back to His purposes. It is not shrinking, it is submitting, and the two could not be more different. A candle that hides its flame doesn't honor the one who lit it. A lamp that covers its light doesn't protect its own brightness. It defeats its entire reason for existing. And Jesus said it directly in Matthew 5:14. "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden." He didn't say you should try to be the light. He said, you are. And you don't hide what you are. You let it burn. And this brings us to something most people miss entirely. The enemy doesn't attack what is weak. He attacks what is dangerous. If your life has been marked by unusual resistance, early pain, relentless opposition, Attacks that came before you even understood what you carried. That is not a sign of abandonment. That is a sign of assignment. Think about it. Herod didn't order the killing of every child in Bethlehem because he was bored. He did it because something in the spirit realm recognized that one of those children carried a threat to the kingdom of darkness. And the same principle is true for your life. The intensity of what has come against you is a map of what lives inside you. The enemy doesn't waste resources on people who aren't going somewhere. Look back at your own history with fresh eyes. Look at the weight of what has opposed you. Look at how early it started. Some of you can trace the resistance back to your childhood, to environments that should have been safe but weren't, to people who should have protected you but didn't, to circumstances that seemed designed specifically to break what was forming inside you before it ever had a chance to fully develop. And I want you to understand something about that. The timing of the opposition is prophetic. When the enemy moves early, it means he perceived something early. He recognized what was coming before the world did, before you did. The warfare you experienced in your youngest, most vulnerable years was not random cruelty. It was targeted strategy against a calling that the kingdom of darkness could already see on the horizon of your life. And if the enemy has been strategic in his opposition, how much more strategic is the God who designed your purpose and has been engineering your preparation with every single detail of your story. Coming up, the hidden agreement you've been honoring without realizing it, and why it has the power to stop everything God is trying to release in your life. Stay with me, because once that truth about spiritual opposition lands, something else has to be addressed, and this is the part that requires honesty. You have been loyal to people, systems, and voices that were never assigned to your destiny. And I want to say that with compassion, because the loyalty came from love. You stayed because you're the kind of person who stays. You kept showing up because walking away felt like betrayal. But there is a difference between loyalty and soul ties that were never sanctioned by heaven. There are connections in your life right now that are draining what God is trying to fill. And until you discern the difference between a divine appointment and a spiritual anchor, you will keep carrying weight that was never meant to be yours. Some of those connections were beautiful once. Some of them carried real love, real meaning, real history. That's what makes the discernment so painful, because you're not being asked to judge the people involved. You're not being asked to condemn or diminish what was real between you. You're being asked to recognize that not every meaningful relationship is a destined one. Not every person you love is assigned to your next chapter, and not every environment that once nurtured you is capable of sustaining the version of you that God is now building. There are seasons that serve their purpose and then close. There are relationships that were meant to bring you to a certain place and not beyond it. And holding on to what God has already released out of loyalty, out of grief, out of fear of the space that will be created when you let go, is one of the most effective ways the enemy uses beautiful things to keep you from your next breakthrough. David understood this. When Saul turned on him not once, not twice, but repeatedly, David had to make one of the most spiritually difficult decisions a human being can make. He had to release his loyalty to a king God had already rejected, while still honoring the position without honoring the dysfunction. He didn't become bitter, he didn't retaliate, but he also didn't stay in range of the spear. There is a kind of wisdom that says, I release you from my future while I release myself from your past. And if you're honest with yourself, there are names and places and seasons in your life that God has already released, but you haven't. There are spears in your life right now that you keep stepping back into range of because the hand that throws them once belonged to someone you loved, someone you served, someone who was a king in your story before the anointing shifted. And God is not asking you to stop loving them. He is asking you to stop positioning yourself as the target of what they can no longer contain. because the spear that Saul threw was not a personal rejection of David's worth. It was the overflow of Saul's own spiritual deterioration. And if David had stood still and received it, the loss would not have been David's dignity. It would have been his destiny. Some things you have to move away from, not because they are evil, but because your continued proximity to their decay is costing you something God cannot afford to let you lose. And just when you think that's the hardest thing you'll hear today, there's one more layer beneath even that. Because it's not just the external connections that are holding you, it's the internal conversation. There's a voice in your own mind that has been framing your story in a way that keeps you circling the same ground. It sounds like wisdom because it uses your own language. It sounds like caution because it knows your history. But it is not the voice of the Most High. It is the voice of every wound that never healed, every disappointment that never got processed, every time someone told you that you were too much or not enough. And that voice has been narrating your life as if it has authority. It doesn't, but you have to consciously stop giving it the floor. Because here's what that internal voice does that is so insidious, it doesn't announce itself as the enemy. It announces itself as reason. It wraps its conclusions in your own experience, in your own memories, in the actual documented evidence of times when things went wrong and people left and doors didn't open. And so it feels like it's protecting you. It feels like the responsible, mature, spiritually sober voice in the room. But Romans 8:6 draws the line with stunning clarity. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. The voice that sounds like caution but keeps you paralyzed is not the Spirit. The voice that sounds like humility but keeps you hidden is not the Spirit. The Spirit of God produces life. The Spirit of God produces peace. Not the false peace of avoidance, but the deep, settled peace of someone who knows where they are going and who is leading them there. If the voice in your head is producing anxiety, contraction, and perpetual delay, it is not the voice of the one who breathed life into you, and it is time to stop treating it like it is. Coming up, the thing that has been disguised as spiritual discipline in your life, but has actually been keeping you from stepping into the fullness of what God prepared. This one will challenge you. Here's what most people don't realize about waiting on God. There is a kind of waiting that is faith, and there is a kind of waiting that is avoidance dressed in spiritual language. One waits with expectation, with active preparation, with a posture that says, I don't have the answer yet, but I'm ready when it comes. The other waits because movement feels terrifying, because if you never try, you never fail, because the waiting has become more comfortable than the becoming. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, but God wasn't wasting those years. Moses was being stripped of Egypt. The palace had given him a false identity, and the desert was the only place brutal enough to remove it. But there came a moment when the burning bush appeared, and Moses could not remain still any longer. The same is true for you. There is a burning bush in your life right now, something God has been trying to get your attention with. And the question isn't whether He's speaking. The question is, are you willing to take off your shoes and step closer, even if the ground feels holy in a way that makes you feel unworthy to stand on it? The burning bush didn't move toward Moses. It stayed where it was and burned, and Moses had to make the decision to turn aside. That phrase, turn aside, carries enormous spiritual weight. Moses was on his way somewhere else. He had a direction, a routine, a path he was already walking, and the invitation of God required him to interrupt his own trajectory and move towards something he didn't yet understand. It required curiosity in the presence of the unknown. It required willingness to step off the familiar path and onto ground he had no previous map for. And the fire didn't explain itself before Moses approached. God didn't send an angel with a detailed briefing before the encounter. The revelation came inside the encounter. The instructions came after Moses turned aside. which means that some of what you've been waiting for God to explain before you move, waiting for the full picture before you take a step, some of that clarity is only available on the other side of the turning. You cannot receive the fullness of what God is saying from the distance of your hesitation. Some instructions are only delivered in proximity, because here's the transition that most people in a season of preparation never make, and it's the one that determines everything. It is the shift from consuming revelation to becoming it. You have been listening to messages. You have been reading the Word. You have been absorbing, studying, waiting, preparing. And there is a season for all of that. God honors it. But there comes a moment in every chosen life when the preparation period closes and the activation begins. And activation doesn't feel like confidence. It doesn't feel like clarity. It feels like stepping off the edge of something familiar and trusting that the ground will be there when your foot lands. Elisha watched Elijah for years. He served. He observed. He learned. But the moment the mantle fell, he couldn't look to Elijah anymore. He had to pick it up himself. And he had to strike the water alone, with no guarantee it would part the same way it had for his teacher. Think about the enormity of that moment for Elisha, the man who had carried the anointing he had watched and followed and served under gone. The confirmations were gone. The model was gone. The living proof that it was possible was gone. And he stood at the edge of the Jordan River with nothing but a cloak and a question forming in his own spirit. Does the same God who was with Elijah show up for me? And he struck the water. He didn't strike it with the confidence of a man who had done it before. He struck it with the desperation of a man who had nothing left but faith and the audacity to try. And the water parted. Not because Elisha had earned it, not because he had proven himself sufficient, but because the God of Elijah was also the God of Elisha, and he honors the strike of faith even when the hand holding the mantle is trembling. Your trembling hands are not disqualified hands. Your uncertain steps are not faithless steps. The God who split the Jordan for Elisha is the same God looking at you right now, waiting for you to strike the water. And what's coming next will likely surprise you because it always does. Most people believe that the final barrier to their breakthrough is external. They're waiting for the right person to open the door, the right season to arrive, the right circumstance to line up. But the real confrontation, the one that cannot be bypassed, is internal. And here's the hidden root most people never name. It is the fear of your own greatness, not the fear of failure, not the fear of rejection, the fear of actually becoming who God said you are. Because if you rise, you become visible. And visible means vulnerable. Visible means you can be criticized, misunderstood, abandoned by people who were comfortable with the smaller version of you. And somewhere deep inside, you made a decision maybe you don't even remember when that staying hidden was safer than being seen. You called it humility. You called it wisdom. You called it waiting on God, but it was fear, and it has been masquerading in spiritual clothing long enough. The fear of greatness is one of the most sophisticated fears a human being can carry because it doesn't look like fear at all. It looks like patience. It looks like caution. It looks like not wanting to get ahead of God. And all of those things are legitimate spiritual postures when they come from the right place. But when they are being used as a shield against the terror of becoming fully visible, fully responsible, fully accountable to the weight of the thing God placed inside you, they become something else entirely. They become the fig leaves of Eden, a covering for nakedness, a way of hiding from the voice of God when he walks through the garden asking, "Where are you?" And you have been answering that question the same way Adam answered it, not with your location, but with your fear. I was afraid, and I hid. But God is not looking for the hidden version of you. He is calling for the whole one. He is calling for the one who has been through the fire and not been consumed. He is calling for the one whose very survival of the wilderness is proof that something divine is at work. He is calling your name. And the fullness of your answer matters. There's something beneath even that. The thing that has been blocking you isn't the enemy. It isn't your past. It isn't the people who hurt you, or the doors that closed, or the years that felt wasted. The thing that has been blocking you is an unspoken agreement you made with your own limitations. A quiet moment somewhere in your story where the pain became so great that you decided unconsciously, spiritually, that wanting less was the safest way to avoid losing more. And God is not angry with you for making that agreement. He understands the wound that led to it, but He is asking you right now, in this moment, to break it, to revoke it, to declare out loud that the God who formed you before the foundations of the earth did not bring you this far to leave you reduced. He brought you here to restore you to the full measure of what you were always made to be. There are covenants we make with pain that we never intend to make. We don't sit down and formally agree to a smaller life. The agreement happens in the moment of deepest hurt, when the soul reaches for the nearest available comfort and finds it in contraction, when the loss is great enough, when the betrayal is deep enough, when the failure is public enough. Something inside decides that expansion is no longer safe. And from that moment forward, the life begins to organize itself around the boundary of that decision. You stop applying for certain things. You stop believing certain prayers will be answered for you specifically. You stop letting yourself want with the kind of full-hearted intensity that would expose you to the kind of full-hearted devastation you've already survived once. And God sees all of it. He sees the original wound. He sees the moment the agreement was made. He sees every year you've spent inside the reduced version of the life He intended. And His response is not condemnation. It is invitation. Joel 2:25 carries one of the most staggering promises in all of Scripture. I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten. Not some of the years, not the years that were wasted through your own deliberate choices. The years, all of them, the ones taken by loss, the ones swallowed by delay, the ones spent inside the agreement you made with your own limitations. God is a God of restoration so complete that even time itself bends to His purposes. And the final thing, the unexpected thing, the thing that reframes everything you've just heard, is this. You have been asking God to confirm your calling, but God has been waiting for you to accept it. He's not withholding, He's waiting. Because the breakthrough you're asking for requires a version of you that you haven't fully agreed to become yet. The moment you say yes, not halfway, not conditionally, not when it feels safer, but completely yes, is the moment the instructions you've been waiting for start to move. The confirmation you have been praying for is not on the other side of more prayer. It is on the other side of more surrender. Because God does not confirm to the version of you that is still negotiating the terms of the calling. He confirms to the version of you that has already laid down every condition, every caveat, every yes, but. Abraham didn't receive the fullness of the covenant until he placed Isaac on the altar, not because God wanted Isaac, but because God wanted Abraham's unconditional yes. He wanted to know, and more importantly, He wanted Abraham to know that nothing had been held back, that the surrender was complete, that the love for God exceeded even the love for the promise. And when Abraham's hand reached for the knife, the provision appeared. The ram in the thicket was already there. It had been there the whole time. God wasn't waiting for Abraham to prove something to him. He was waiting for Abraham to discover something in himself that when everything else was released, God would be enough. And He is enough for you too. The provision you need is already in your thicket, but the altar has to come first. Place your hand on your heart and declare this with me. I release every agreement I made with my own limitations. I break every soul tie that was draining what God was trying to fill. I silence every voice that was narrating my story with fear and calling it wisdom. I receive the fullness of what I was made to carry. I step out of the waiting that was avoidance and into the waiting that is preparation completed. I am not too late. I am not too broken. I am not disqualified by what I've been through. I am refined by it. I accept my calling completely and without condition. I pick up my mantle, I strike the water, and I walk forward knowing that the God who chose me before I was formed has never not once changed his mind about me. My breakthrough is not coming, it is already here, and I walk into it now. Let that declaration settle in your spirit. Don't rush past it. The words you just spoke are not empty ritual, they are spiritual declaration. And spiritual declaration has creative power. Proverbs 18:21 tells us that death and life are in the power of the tongue. What you have just spoken over your own life has the power to shift the atmosphere of your story, not because of the volume or the eloquence of the words, but because of the God who is listening, because of the covenant that underlies them, because of the truth that has always been true about you, waiting for your agreement to fully activate what was already written. If this message reached something in you that needed to be reached, don't let this moment pass without honoring it. Share this with someone whose spirit has been silent too long. Leave a comment and tell God and yourself what you're stepping into, because chosen ones don't just consume revelation, they carry it forward, and you were always meant to be one of them.